Welcome back to City Heads. For this one, we're at the wonderful Peckham Rye station in southeast London. Now, if you've used this station recently, you'll know that to access it from Rye Lane, which is like Peckham's High Street, you have to walk through quite a rundown arcade to actually get to the station itself. A lot of the shops and businesses that were in this arcade moved on years ago, and what Peckham was left with was this quite dimly lit, heavily graffitied arcade that felt quite unsafe to walk through. But in March, work finally started on a £27 million project to demolish the arcade, to completely remove it and to open up the whole area, to open up that beautiful Victorian facade to the High Street and create this new public square between the High Street and the station itself. The new square will have planting, benches and better lighting, and it'll be fronted on both sides by retail units and restaurants fitted into the revealed railway arches, providing space for local traders and businesses, engineering a brilliant new gateway to Peckham while providing some relief from the busy, cluttered High Street. The station was built in 1865 and is a classic example of Victorian railway architecture, and was beautifully restored back to its original grandeur a few years ago. It'll create a centrepiece for the new public space, opening it up from Rye Lane for the first time in generations and creating a sense of arrival for the tens of thousands of people who use this station every day. We went up to the rooftop of Peckham Levels to get an idea of how the station building will frame this new public space, sandwiched as it is between the railway viaducts. Now, the station is built in a H shape in a continental Renaissance style, which gives it an almost palatial symmetry. It's Grade 2 listed and has been since 2008. And that symmetry is further amplified by these like French-looking mansard roofs. You can't quite see them from here, but I'll show you some pictures. It sits atop these 5 round-headed windows, and those central 3 windows have these cast iron balconets as well, which further amplify that symmetry. And I think this beautiful palatial looking facade will be such a nice terminating vista for the new square that they're planning to create right here. As part of the restoration, there's also a proposal to rebuild the iron and glass canopy that used to adorn the station frontage, which I think is a really nice touch. And crucially, the station is remaining open to passengers for the duration of the works. Now, the arcade itself was built in the 1930s in an Art Deco style, which, although a little bit faded, was still evident before demolition. It had these crittle windows and a bit of a subtle symmetry to the facade. And until the paint faded, the facade was also decorated with these fan-shaped sunburst motifs and chevrons, which are possibly echoing the Egyptian revival influences that were quite heavily used in Art Deco architecture during the 1920s and 30s. If they'd spent a bit of money on it, it could probably have ended up looking pretty great again, but honestly, I think the proposed square is a much better solution. It'll create a welcome bit of open space in one of London's busiest areas. Other stations on the Southern Railway were also given Art Deco frontages in this era, including Richmond and Surbiton. It was all part of the Southern Railway's development of their Peckham estate, which began in 1935. It created a small ensemble of Art Deco frontages all around the station. While the bit directly in front of the station is being demolished, a section to the south has been preserved and enhanced with a new rooftop community pool and glazed roof garden. And to the east of the station sits another Art Deco frontage, which has also been restored in recent years. And there was originally a square in front of the station building before the arcade was built in the 1930s. So this proposal simply brings the space back to how it used to look prior to 100 years ago. Now, this is all part of a community-led plan that was first proposed way back in 2016. And since then, there's been this massive fundraising effort to sort of get the scheme through public consultation and planning. This proposal was first mooted back in 2008, when the plan was to demolish the arcade as now, but surround the square with new buildings that would help fund the redevelopment by adding new lettable floor space. These new buildings were later dropped in favour of an enlarged public space, with the arches brought back into use instead to help pay for the redevelopment. Between 2008 and today, local neighbourhood groups have worked with Southwark Council, Network Rail and the GLA to evolve these plans into what we see today. And so this is what the square will look like when it's finished. Any businesses that were located in the arcade have been relocated nearby. Some have gone into nearby Peckham Palms and other local commercial spaces. And there's a lot of tension in Peckham at the moment when it comes to these sorts of development projects. Fears of gentrification and turning Peckham into a carbon copy of pretty much every other gentrified part of London, with some locals wanting to preserve Peckham's soul. It's a place I have a bit of a soft spot for because of how it manages to pack so much into such a small area. Back alleys are turned into small markets and places for restaurants to spill out, which gives every corner a strong sense of place. There's a lot of life on the streets, which means it effortlessly achieves that sense of vibrancy that some places spend millions of pounds trying to achieve. And there's a good mix of architecture. Like this building with its Baroque centrepiece, stained glass arched window and Dutch-style gables. Or this one, which always reminds me of something you might find in a French village. It's unapologetically gritty and idiosyncratic, and I think we need places like this in London. I don't want every part of this city to start looking the same because that would be boring and sad, and we'd regret it in years to come. Plans to redevelop the nearby Aylesham shopping centre into 877 new homes, plus new shops and a redeveloped supermarket, were put forward in 2021. Opposition to the plans enforced that the scheme would sanitise Peckham, drive up local property values and displace Peckham's existing community. They also objected to the loss of space for independent traders and rallied against proposals for buildings of up to 20 stories, which would have significantly changed Peckham's overall lower-rise character. And these plans were officially rejected in May 2026. The site is currently a 1980s built shopping centre with a large surface car park at the back. A lot of the shops are empty, which could be due to a lack of demand, or more likely, given that the rest of Peckham is thriving, they came to the end of their lease due to the impending redevelopment. The future of this shopping precinct is now looking a bit uncertain. I reckon if it had a facelift, it could be brought back to life. And if retail is no longer viable, I could see it becoming Peckham's version of Brixton Village. Although I can understand why the local community objected to these plans, it's worth noting that the proposals also included 77 affordable homes, about 12% of the total homes proposed here. And although this provision represented a massive reduction from the original 37% affordable homes earmarked here, it still left a bad taste to see Southwark Council celebrating the rejection of these 77 affordable homes in a borough where thousands of people are on affordable housing waiting lists. Because although that number is a reduction on what was originally proposed, Peckham will now see no affordable homes built here at all, which won't help matters. But I think this plan is good. It's a community-led project which is bottom-up rather than top-down. The new square will integrate into Peckham's business community, it'll provide space for new businesses in these arches, and as far as I can tell, it hasn't displaced any existing businesses. And Southwark Council have now pledged the £27 million required to make it a reality. And where we're at now is that the building has finally started being demolished, ready to put this plan into fruition. The work started in March, and there's some of it left, to be fair. They've sort of removed the roof and things like that, but the arcade has started to be demolished, and this plan is now finally, after kind of 10 years of being talked about, is finally coming to fruition. When I visited in May, parts of the old building were still here, including this part of the facade. But visiting again in July, we can see that they've cleared much of the site and only small parts of the old arcade are left. These vaulted railway arches along the side have been revealed and exposed for the first time in nearly 100 years, ready to be converted into businesses that will spill into the new public square. You can also see how the new square will be bookended by one of the other Art Deco buildings that were built in the same era as the arcade, and thankfully this one will be staying, meaning that this new square will benefit from the Victorian facade of the railway station at one end and this Art Deco masterpiece at the other, contained on both sides by the railway arches. If all goes to plan, this should be completed by summer 2027, and this incredible new public square will be open for all to enjoy. A brilliant new gateway into one of London's most brilliant places. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.